I presume you're here in order to learn of Magecraft. I'll have you know, there's no room for the weak-willed in this course, and despite your best efforts, the sorcery of our time is but a fraction of what it once was in the Age of Gods. Much of the craft is established through pedigree, and the culture of mages is riddled with deception and moral depravity. That said, if you insist, I shall do my best to educate you in this miserable, yet fascinating world. In our previous lesson in Magecraft, I covered both the magical circuits engraved upon a mage's soul and the symbolic crests mage families use to transfer their knowledge from one generation to another. The magic crests in particular are most closely related to an ancient form of thaumaturgy known as Rune Magecraft. Both share commonality in their use of symbology, the imbuing of world-shaping forces into letters and symbols. Runes as we know them originated in Scandinavia during the Age of Gods as a written language used by Norse and Germanic peoples. Rather than being merely letters for communication between humans, these runes were tied to varying cosmic powers. To that end, it is no surprise that the term rune means both letter and mystery. In short, they are symbols tied to supernatural aspects of our physical world, and can be invoked to cast spells based upon what they symbolize. According to Norse mythology, the runes were native to the Well of Erd and would only reveal themselves to those worthy of their powers. The great god Odin once coveted knowledge of the runes and ventured into the well after piercing himself with his spear, hanging precariously from a branch of Yggdrasil. He stared into the depths for 9 days and nights, accepting no help from other gods, until finally seeing the rune's shapes. Given their ancient origins, it is difficult to discern the absolute truth of such legends, leading the Mages Association to believe that perhaps the runes were not discovered by Odin, but in fact created by him. This lacks certainty, however. Rune Magecraft isn't exactly popular within the association. Of its affiliates, there are only a handful of mages who use them. The runes used today are, at best, pale imitations of Odin's primeval runes. Nonetheless, these modern runes are used frequently by Celtic mages such as Bazett Mikremits and the likes of Toko Aozaki. This is because they are heavily rooted in Norse and Celtic culture, and using them requires profound understanding of their meaning. If mastered, however, rune magic can be exceptionally useful. In practice, runes are most effective when inscribed directly onto a mage's target, but they will also function at a distance, so long as the target lacks magical resistance. Runes are versatile, each one having various meanings that can be interpreted to a degree, allowing spells to take the shape their casters imagine them to be. Each symbol is not necessarily indicative of a given spell. Rather, they can be combined in different orders to create more complex spells. For instance, combined runes are able to create bounded fields. The primeval runes of Odin comprise most of the craft, although talented ancient mages like Scathach have knowledge of potentially older runes. As I mentioned before, however, mages hoping to utilize them now must rely upon modern runes that imitate the old. Our best way to understand them is to go over the various examples in which they are used. One of the most quintessential runes is Ansa's, which is the rune of order. Essentially, it represents bringing order to the world through language. Toko Aozaki once used this rune in an attempt to dispel the mischievous wraiths haunting Shiki Ryogi. The effect was a purifying flame, which ultimately failed, because the wraith's body was inhabiting a deceased mage who could resist it. To disperse both himself and the Einsburn castle, Irish legend Cu Chulainn invoked Ansuz to ignite the entire building. Algiz is a rune that symbolizes elk. Its connection with the gods invokes a higher presence to protect one from hidden dangers. Not This is a rune that symbolizes necessity. It is connected with resistance, which holds forms together. Ingas is a rune that symbolizes seeds. It is associated with separation and isolation, allowing beings to transcend to higher states. When all 4 of these runes are used in proper succession, mages are able to cast Ngabala, a spell that curses 2 combatants to fight one another without refusal. It was most used by Cu Chulainn and the Knights of the Red Branch in establishing a proper battlefield for duels. Birkenau is a rune that symbolizes the birch goddess. With the dawn of spring, the first tree to awaken is the birch, representing the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. In practice, Cu Chulainn has used this rune to track targets by casting stones. Ewas is a rune that symbolizes the horse. It represents the contrast between mind and body, granting strength to vehicles used for travel. By inscribing this onto her gloves, Bazett is able to harden her fists enough to crush human heads in a single punch. Kenaz is a rune that symbolizes the torch. It is associated with knowledge, intellect, and illumination. Bazett is able to use this rune to enhance her own vision. Sawilo is a rune that symbolizes the sun, functioning as a rune of fire. Tiwaz is a rune that symbolizes divine justice, named after the god Tyr. Thorizas is a rune that symbolizes giants. It imbues the same strength and energy as Thor's Mjolnir hammer. Wanjo is a rune that symbolizes joy, harmony, and the soul's will to achieve perfection. Gebu is a rune that symbolizes a gift. It is the same pagan symbol appropriated to represent the holiday of Christmas. It invokes sacrifice and fair exchange. Hagalaz is a rune that symbolizes hailstone, an embodiment of destruction, crisis, and catastrophe. Rydho is a rune that symbolizes a wagon. It represents freedom, travel, and journeying. Issa is a rune that symbolizes ice, embodying stillness in the dual nature of peace and serenity. Yera is a rune that symbolizes the year, more practically the harvest and annual cycles. Berthro is a rune that symbolizes the unknown. It pertains most to matters of fate and fortune. Uas is a rune that symbolizes yew, referring to the tree Yggdrasil. It more generally pertains to timelessness and immortality. Fehu is a rune that symbolizes cattle. It pertains to property, beginnings, and wealth. Uras is a rune that symbolizes aurochs. It is associated with formation, as it applies to structure, health, and solidarity. Manas is a rune that symbolizes mankind. It embodies all aspects of humanity. Lagas is a rune that symbolizes water, more broadly referring to the subconscious, dreams, and imagination. Degas is a rune that symbolizes the day. It is associated with awakenings and enlightenment. And lastly, there is Othala, a rune that symbolizes the homeland. It is a source of power coming from the estate and one's ancestry. It is the rune most approximate to a magic crest. Strangely enough, not all spells involved with rune magecraft actually require the use of a specific letter. Gundo is a Scandinavian curse that technically belongs to this category, even though it operates by releasing the curse from its user's index finger. While Rin Tosaka is often seen using it, the curse is actually most practiced by the Adelfelt lineage, being some of the best Gundo users across the globe. In summation, it is possible to contain magical energy into culturally significant symbols that, when invoked, will cast spells based on their meaning. Runes are the dominant form of this symbology, originating from Scandinavia and heavily influencing Celtic myth as well. It is the go-to practice of magecraft for Irish warriors such as Cu Chulainn, Scathach, and Bazett, and certainly a key asset for Germanic heroes such as Sigurd and Brynhildr. All this considered, rune magecraft remains one of the less popular forms practiced within the association. Thus, before we move on, it will be imperative to discuss the Mages Association itself, focusing on the various departments and affiliated groups within. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this channel, help me beat the algorithm by liking, commenting, and sharing the video, subscribing to OtakuDaiKun, and most of all, smashing that notification bell as if it were your waifu. That way you'll never miss out on all of my anime content, lore videos, live streams, and Holy Waifu Wars polls. My vids are struggling to get featured, so that bell is absolutely critical. If you want to support me directly, check out my Patreon, or consider donating via Super Chat. And as always, celebrate your fandom.